So ours is also restate again as a 2-week course, not the 6-week course. And like Allison had said, like it's one course you get credit for, but it's kind of all three jammed together. If I'd say it's a little light on some of it, maybe at least for the Colorado program, it's a little light maybe on the cultural side of things. We might touch on some of it, and it's more modern day of how we're dealing with people and managing and stuff. But we probably won't get as much of the history in depth as much in 6 weeks. But for the other things, the basic ecology and the research techniques and stuff like that, like Antonia said, like you cram a lot in the 2 weeks. Like I'm used to teaching 6-week classes. I've been teaching a 2-week one in Channel Islands for a while, so I've kind of been able to adapt it, but I still just want to fill it all the time with more stuff. So they're not a lot of down days, but they're pretty rich days of doing different stuff. So let's see, so 2-week, let me make sure this one is actually moving on command. All right, okay. So to start out with, I thought I'd just tell you a bit about myself. My name is Adam Dillon. I kind of have a lot of different things I do for a kind of more academic side of life. I definitely been a wildlife ecologist, I'd say, for a number of years now, with a specialization kind of in carnivore ecology and conservation. I also have dealt with threatened endangered species a lot in my career, and more recently climate change. And the part that I kind of have been doing with climate change is more focused on threatened endangered species and how they're adapting rather than like climatology or something else. We're kind of getting a lot of predictions from climate and then using that to see how we kind of manage and research some of that for carnivores. So I'm not used to being able to do this without like a little laser pointer or something. But on the left-hand side, currently I'm doing a project on coyotes and bobcats in Southern California. And then, so I've been living in Colorado for 11 years now. But a lot of my work has been other places, although I've been involved in projects out here. My PhD work was on island foxes and island spotted skunk out on Santa Cruz Channel Islands off the coast of Southern California. And then for my master's work, I was at Virginia Tech, and I did a lot of work on camera trapping and tracking and trapping of ocelots and some jaguars as well down in Belize. Let's see. I also have for a long time been an educator, instructor, professor, communicator, whatever you want to call it, like just interaction between people and teaching and field work and research and everything. So I have been teaching off and on with Wildlands Studies for a long time now. We're going on almost 20 years. I haven't necessarily taught every single year, but like a lot of students, Allison was saying before, kind of got handed down. Let's see.
Battery 50%.
Can you guys still hear me?
Connect to see.
Belize Wildlands Studies class handed to me as a grad student from my professor who had kind of created it. It's running and then developed it, changed it a little bit, did the Belize one for a while. I've also developed and taught a course in Pacific Northwest. I taught New Zealand for about 10 years until I had a couple of kids, and that made it a little bit harder to leave so much to go to New Zealand. So I handed it off to the new instructors that are there, one of which is a long-term friend of mine, and the other one was an old student of mine who now teaches the course, who might be joining us for ours. And then I've been teaching the Channel Islands class for the past 5 or 6 years there as well. In addition to Wildlands Studies, recently in the past couple of years, I've also been teaching with Colorado State University and been teaching a springtime Colorado field course. So basically all over spring break and throughout weekends kind of for the whole semester. So although a lot of my kind of focused academic research has not been in Colorado, I've been living here for 11 years and have been involved in a lot of projects and have a lot of connections here, which it makes me really excited to kind of launch this project a bit. Okay, so on to the project. Let's see. Oh yeah, there you are. There's Allison, a little highlighted down there from New Zealand, from when she was there in the little yellow circle. Well, you can't really see too much, but that's her smiling up a storm. Let's see. All right, so I just thought I'd go regional and geographic. So here's Colorado. I can't do a really pointer in here, but obviously that straight, kind of green line down the middle is your divide of where the Front Range starts. When we would start out in the beginning, a lot of this course isn't quite fully finalized yet. just with COVID going on and stuff, trying to get involved in different projects has been stickier this year. So I have a lot of ideas of how the course is going to go, but exact locations is going to be dependent on what we can get green lights to do. So I have a lot of smattering of different options are going on, and people are kind of working behind the scenes to see what they can kind of pull off for us. So that will determine where we go, but it won't really determine as much curriculum, the kind of things we're going to talk about. So we'll first start out going out on the grasslands out here. This is a Pawnee grassland, some of the last kind of prairies left. And we'll discuss a lot of the different threats that have been impacting the wildlife in Colorado across the board. And so in a lot of the prairie, you're dealing with things like cattle ranching, oil development, agriculture, and we've got some really kind of rare patches of our native grasslands. So you might do some point counts on avian grassland birds out there. We'll look at the reintroduction the bison, both in the city of Fort Collins and certain areas out here. The black-footed ferret, which is an endangered species, has been released out here, and their breeding program is right outside of Fort Collins, which is where I live. So we'll look at a lot of the kind of prairie grassland ecosystems, prairie dogs and black-footed ferrets, bison, some reintroduction programs, as well as some of the impacts on that system, which is kind of agriculture, cattle, and oil for the most part. Then we'll kind of move inland a little bit. This is kind of centered around Rocky Mountain National Park. So we'll go up and through and over Rocky Mountain National Park, look at some of the geology of the area, and really start looking at it from a watershed point of view. We're right up there on the Continental Divide, so you'll be able to have the entire eastern side of the watershed going all the way to the Mississippi. And then you have two different kind of watersheds also, all of the Colorado River, obviously, that goes west of here, but then down south, it starts in the Rio Grande Watershed Basin. So you have kind of three different major watersheds in the mountain areas here. So we'll kind of start looking at the alpine and the alpine tundra, looking predominantly at climate change and the impacts, especially in those areas, the higher alpine areas, looking at pika, also like cutthroat trout, which are native, boreal toads, which basically kind of freeze themselves over winter and then come out in the high alpine cirque areas. We'll look at kind of fire and the way that climate change has impacted increased fire intensity and frequency. And one thing we'll definitely talk about, and anybody kind of see or meet along the way, is the wolf reintroduction. Those of you who have not, heard about it, or else last November we had a ballot initiative that was passed that now has made it mandated that the Colorado Parks and Wildlife have to start managing for a reintroduction program for wolves. So it's not happening yet. We've had a couple come in on their own, usually shot on the north side from Wyoming, but now this is kind of like gearing up a whole plan of stuff. So it's in the kind of working stages of what to do within Colorado Parks and Wildlife, but it's a very kind of heated and very contemporary topic right now. Next, we'll kind of move interior a little bit, not totally sure here. We could go all the way down to San Juan's, which would be getting down to like southwest area, but this is kind of centered around Gunnison. And then here you're kind of getting a little bit more of the Pinyon Pine area and kind of the Great Basin feel. We'll deal with the lynx reintroduction that happened a long time ago. It was quite successful here. We'll look at Gunnison sage grouse, which are another threatened species that are there. And we'll look at oil and gas developments. So you might have a lot of oil development that's on the east side of the prairies, but we have a lot of natural gas development that's been happening on the western slope that's really amped up in the past 10 years. So the way that's impacting wildlife and as they're moving across the landscape quite a bit. And then we might probably go down to the southern part. This is the head of the Rio Grande watershed, and this is the San Luis Valley, which is an incredible area. It's like this incredibly high level plateau at maybe 8,000 or 9,000 feet that feels like you're way down at like 5,000 with mountains surrounding the whole thing, but it creates this kind of cool weather climates where they roll in and it precipitates a lot. It's also where the Great Sand Dunes National Park is. It's out there. Huge migrations of birds going through there, and we'll start looking at the impacts also of mining and natural resource extraction. And we'll just kind of end. They've got some really kind of unique ecosystems there, like the sand dunes, and we'll check out the stuff. I also, in any of these programs, will do a lot of hiking and camping and stuff, but I will probably try and integrate into at least a 2-day, 2-night kind of backpacking trip that we'll get up into the higher kind of alpine country, maybe some back yurts, or we might actually get some cabins or something. A lot of it, like I said, is depending on location and what are the projects we have going on. That's kind of about it. So I'd love for you guys to join me. Before I kind of finish up, I just want to say that I have taught these programs in a lot of different countries, and I have learned so much by the students that I teach with and what they bring to the class. and I can only do so much to making class good or bad. Like, it's all of us in it together, and it's a really kind of a communal thing that we learn from everybody else's knowledge. But also, I've also, in my years of teaching, been teaching more towards practical skills. Like, what you are going to get out here is not just the like ecology of Colorado. As you can see, like, you know, I kind of know the ecology of a lot of areas now, and it's really kind of learning those skill sets that you can translate to someplace else in your backyard or something else. So, you know, I don't care if, you know, a month, 4 months, a year goes by and you don't remember the fern that's there, but I want you to know how to be able to find out what fern it is or what fern is in your backyard, you know, and be able to learn those things. So I think the practical skills of not just learning how to learn the environment, but also the skills that will be good for surveys and actual kind of groundwork technicality, the networking skills you end up getting from different agencies, and the kind of potential of like what jobs are even there. Like Antonia said, like, I think a lot of people kind of get in this realm and get their degree and be like, okay, now what the hell do I do? And so just kind of being able to see, not like, I'm not going to be sitting here with a doom and gloom, but more of like all these impacts that are on the system, but then how are we dealing with that? What are the jobs that are out there that are trying to learn from that? How can you, like, if this is an area of the country you want or someplace else to go back home, how do you get those positions? How do you make a difference? How do you get a career in this field? And I think I like to try to highlight that. And it's also a really interesting thing when we get biologists or people in agencies that come out to talk to us, and then you go open that up for questions. And then they're always like, well, how'd you get to where you are? It's like the best answers from everybody. Like, it's never a straight line. It's always a unique story of how they got those positions. And so getting some idea of just kind of how to navigate that for yourselves going forward too is a main key for what I want to teach in these courses. So without me kind of rambling on anymore, I'll open it up to questions from everybody else. And that's about it.